should try put yourself in positions where you're forced to come outside your comfort zone, because when you're outside of that comfort zone, that's where you're going to see the true growth. That's where you're going to see your true potential. Because I don't think you unlock that if you're always sort of scared to do, if you're always scared to do things that things that seem daunting. You have to just put yourself in that position and just go for it and do it.
Welcome back to the BPSA podcast. In this episode, we'll be speaking to Oscar, a second-year pharmacy student at Robert Gordon University and this year's winner of the Outstanding Contribution to Pharmacy Award. Listen how we talk confidence, contribution and creation. Hi Oscar, welcome back to the BPSA podcast.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you.
Great. Now, I brought you onto the podcast because I've heard you're an award winner, and I believe you're an award winner for Outstanding Contribution this year to the BPSA. Do you mind quickly just introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Oscar Nadula. First year pharmacy student going to second year, and I study at Robert Gordon in Aberdeen.
Cool, that's really cool. And what made you decide to pursue a career in pharmacy?
I think for me, it was always something healthcare related. I know when I was younger, I did have ideas of being like a lawyer, an engineer. But then when I thought of like why I wanted to do those sort of careers, it was just purely for the money. And then I thought to myself, like, what kind of person do I want to be? I want to be someone that has performance, because you can be on a salary of like £100,000 a year, but then if you're going to work and you're not really feeling happy and you don't really have the performance, there's no point sort of being there. So why not go for something that's like healthcare related, where you know that every single day you're making an impact upon someone's life. And it doesn't have to be directly, it could be indirectly as well. So I think it was that idea of healthcare for me. And then it was between medicine and pharmacy. And I think with pharmacy, I enjoyed that chemistry aspect of it. So I think that's why pharmacy for me, because you have that tie of like knowing the knowledge, a bunch of medications, which I think is just crazy the amount of medications you have to know, and then tying that into patients. And again, it's you being able to have that direct and positive impact upon someone. That's why I think pharmacy was really for me.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. I think definitely that's one of the reasons I got into it as well. Did you ever have any like work experience before, or did you just go straight into it?
Yeah, I think in terms of work experience, I think a lot of people think that if you're doing pharmacy or like medicine, for example, you have to do work experience in like a pharmacy or a GP. But I don't think that's really the case. Although I did manage to have, and I was fortunate enough to have work experience in both, I think a lot of work experience actually has transferable skills in the sense that I did work experiences in a charity shop. For example, I spent a year working or volunteering for Cancer Research UK. It was like their charity shop. I've worked in care homes, and it's a lot of the transferable skills that you get from that you can then apply to other professions. So it's not necessarily having to get your work experience from that specific thing, or that specific career, but it's also outside work experience that you can tie into anything that you want to do.
Yeah, I love how you've almost like made the most of what you had and what experience you could have got, and then you made it into what you want to see as well. Now, my first impression of you, I remember never met you before, and the first time I saw you, you did a speech, and it was absolutely amazing. And that was after receiving your award. I just wanted to know, how did that feel for you? Because for me, I would have never been able to do that, standing up on stage like that.
I think a lot of it, that speech wasn't actually like pre-planned or anything like that. I just spoke from the heart, and I genuinely spoke about what it means for me to win the award, the effort that I put into win the award. Um, and I think I just spoke from sort of passion and from the heart, because I feel like when you're able to do that, you're able to connect with the audience a lot more better from sort of pre-planning it. And I think that ties into like how I ran some of my workshops as well. When I'm ever doing anything that's public related, I never plan for like word for word what I'm going to do. I never plan it verbatim. I sort of have bullet points, have things that I think about, and then after that, it's more so freestyle. And I think tying it back to that first question about why pharmacy, I like the idea that within pharmacy you can freestyle it in the sense that not everything is 100%. It has to work this way. It's many different routes that can get you to the same answer. And I think that's something that I try to apply in that speech I did.
That's really cool. That's really amazing. So, what did you have to do to receive the award? What kind of things were you doing?
So I was a BPSA rep, so that's the British Pharmaceutical Student Association rep, and that's for my university, Robert Gordon. And I did a few different workshops. So I worked very closely with the Northern Area coordinator, Regina. She was amazing, and the Northern Area team. And then within that, we had two main conferences. One was at Newcastle, one was at Sunderland. And I was given the opportunity to be able to host a workshop. And I did that on soft skills, so that being communication, teamwork, and just skills that I think the pharmacy course doesn't really emphasize too much on. That's what I focused on. I think it was quite inspirational because I think many people think that to be able to do some workshop, you have to be in third year, fourth year, you have to be qualified. And I don't think that's the case. It's just someone that's probably had some experience in it before and someone that's passionate about it and someone that can spread knowledge that you perhaps haven't come across before and just give someone else a different perspective. And I think that's what I try to do in those workshops.
Yeah, I really love how you've just sort of gone for it straight out the way. You know, your first year, you're doing all of this, running your own workshops. That's incredible. How did it feel to stand in front of people? Were you nervous? Any challenges that you received before it?
I think in terms of nerves, I think you're always going to get nervous. But I think one thing that you can do to overcome nerves is just to practice it. So there'll be times where I'm thinking, okay, if this sort of situation happens, this is how I'm going to maneuver it. And there'll be opportunities, or there'll be times where there may be a situation where you're not too sure how to go about something. But again, it comes down to being able to freestyle and have that previous experience of doing something that enables you to be a confident and better version of yourself. And it's through these things that you're able to become a better version of yourself because you don't start off with you being like a really, really good public speaker or someone that's really good at communicating. You start off not knowing too much about communication and then being able to enhance that. And I think that's one thing that I think everyone should do. You should try put yourself in positions where you're forced to come outside your comfort zone because when you're outside of that comfort zone, that's where you're going to see the true growth. That's where you're going to see your true potential. Because I don't think you unlock that if you're always sort of scared to do, um, if you're always scared to do things that things that seem daunting. You have to just put yourself in that position and just go for it and do it. And I think for me, in terms of how this started, um, I previously worked on campsites. So as part of NCS, that's a national citizenship service where we did residential trips with 16, 17, and essentially the sixth formers and year 11s. And in those sort of environments, you're having to put yourself out there, think on the spot, and be creative. And I think it was that initially built that confidence to be able to do it for the first time in front of people that were older than me, in front of second year, third year, fourth year students. Um, so I think it's just about finding those steps to progress and then being able to progress. That was it in terms of how I got to that level.
That's really amazing. I think I definitely agree with you pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. So, if there's any first years maybe listening or anybody who wants to push themselves out their comfort zones who's listening, what advice would you have for them?
It's an interesting question. I think the biggest thing that you can probably do as a first year is open your network in the sense that you've got so many people around you that do so many cool things. Like try to speak to them, try to get to know them, and just join different societies. For example, it could be the BPSA, it could be your pharmacy society. Do things that push you outside your comfort zone and do things that will take you outside something that is non-traditional. Because I think when it's something that's non-traditional, that's where you're able to see that true growth because not many people are used to that. So I think being able to open that network, and that can be through friends. I think that's so important because that just enables you to sort of grow, as I said before.
Yeah, I think definitely who you surround yourself with can make a massive difference. So I'm really glad you brought that up. In your first year, was there any challenges that you received when you were doing these events?
I think the main challenges I had was I wasn't too sure how much to commit to something. I was scared about commitments just because of the fact that I could be in first semester. I don't know how much harder the second semester is compared to the first semester. Or I'm doing an event in first semester. I'm not too sure how exam season is going to be. I think trying to find that balance between you being able to do some conferences or you being able to push yourself out there and have that commitment, as well as being a first year student, I think that was the trickiest thing because you're just unsure around the level of commitment that it takes in order to, progress through your pharmacy course because pharmacy is very, very difficult, and a lot of people they do struggle with it, and it's quite a tough degree. So I think being able to have that balance, that was something that I found quite tricky, but I think I was able to sort of navigate that. And I'm glad that I have done that because I think you're able to show and able to know your limits. You have to sort of push yourself to be able to think, okay, I'm able to do this, but if there was something a bit more than this, okay, I would have struggled there. And then I feel like now I'm able to sort of understand my limits, know when I'm pushing myself too much, and then know how to withdraw that back in order to have the best outcome, which for me would be to progress through pharmacy, but also at the same time be able to have these opportunities to do um, networking and events like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I completely agree with that. So maybe looking into the future, whereabouts do you see yourself going?
I think it's an interesting question because I feel like with pharmacy, a lot of people have this preconceived notion that you're a pharmacist behind the counter, and that's not really the case. With pharmacy, it's very, very exciting, especially next year, 2026, as we're graduating as independent prescribers, which means that you're able to assess patients, diagnose and prescribe medications within your competency. I think it's interesting because there's a lot of different ways you can take it, and I think a lot of people have to look outside your non-traditional career roles, that being like a hospital and your community pharmacy, because there's skills that you gain as a pharmacy student. For example, you being trained as somewhat like a scientist that perhaps the university doesn't really emphasize as much. And I think it's only through, again, going back to the idea of networking, only through networking, you're able to understand that, okay, if I've got this knowledge that I can apply it to this, I can apply it to this, and you can do different things and not necessarily go through that traditional career path. So I think to answer that question specifically in terms of what I see myself doing, I'm not too sure right now. I
Yeah.
think I'm trying my best to do different things in terms of work experiences. So currently now I'm in Glasgow on a 6 week placement. That's like hospital related. And I'm just seeing different areas of pharmacy, and I think to myself, could I see myself doing this? Or if not, what could I see myself doing? And I think that sort of mindset is important to have as a pharmacy student, being able to think, okay, I'm going to try push out, I'm going to try outreach myself and see the different areas that I find interesting and see what I can potentially do with this.
Yeah, I love how you're really exploring your options and getting out there. That's really great. This is just a quick reminder to keep following us on socials. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. Follow the BPSA. Now, one thing I have seen, I'm a little bit of a stalker. I've seen you've got a TikTok. Tell me how you became a creator and how you got into that.
I think with TikTok, a lot of it stemmed from, I think initially my thought was, I don't really see a lot of content creators or people that create content on TikTok, especially in the pharmacy space. You see a lot of it for medics, a lot of it for nurses, paramedics, biomedical scientists, everything else, but not really pharmacy. And what I sort of hope to do is to change the narrative on how people see pharmacy. Because going back to that idea of having that preconceived notion, many people see pharmacy as, okay, you're in a community pharmacy, you've got the pharmacist behind the counter, a pharmacy in a dispensary. And that's not the case. Pharmacy is this career where it's evolving, it's changing so much. And that's what I hope to do. I hope to educate people on what pharmacy is, the different pathways there are within pharmacy, um, as well as just different avenues you can go down because you don't have to always go down this traditional career path. So I think in terms of what inspired me is that lack of representation of pharmacy and trying to change the narrative in terms of what it means to be a pharmacist.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. So you mentioned you're doing a 6 week placement, you're doing TikToks, you're networking. How do you manage it all?
I think a lot of it is consistency, especially when you're in university and it's going close to exam season. Let's say, for example, you've got an exam date and it's a month away. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to try and know this content by next week in the next 2 weeks. So the last 2 weeks is more so me going over it. And it's just about having that consistency. There'll be days where you don't feel like doing it, but for me personally, I would wake up, I would pray, and then I would just get straight to work, knowing that okay, for the next 6 hours, the next 10 hours, the next 12 hours, I'm going to be locked in. I'm going to just be trying my best to get through this content. And I think when you're able to do that, it's really important because it just shows prioritization and you being able to prioritize something and get through it. And I think one thing that many people should really look upon is the idea of when I say network, it doesn't have to be networking with people you don't know. It's networking with people you do know as well. That could be friends in terms of finding what works for you, finding your revision method. I think it's really important for any first years that may be listening that within the first maybe month of the university, you do try and find that pattern. You do try and find that system that works for you. And it's quite tricky because I know friends that perhaps haven't found their revision technique to this day, which is quite tricky. But I think if you're able to establish that within the first month and you're able to have that consistent revision pattern, it's really important because you have your system in place that you can always go back to. And if we tie that to the real life, for example, let's say in a community pharmacy, every community pharmacy has their SOP, their standing operating procedure. You've got these different things you follow. So we can tie that to the idea of you being in a lecture. When you've got a lecture and you've got the content now, what are you going to do after you see that content? What are you going to do when you go home? Right? That's like your SOP. So try and embody that SOPs in a pharmacy in your real life.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I've never thought about it that way. That's really cool. So I might just do some quick fire questions. Will that be okay with you?
Yeah, for sure. Go for it.
Okay, what's your favourite module?
Oh, um, okay. Actually, I'll go with the easy one, an easy answer. I think professional practice, and for us, professional practice, that is the stuff you do outside of lectures. And I feel like the things I do outside of lectures I find more fun, but that's just how it is. And I think that's because you have the element of creativity, because there's not necessarily a systematic thing that you must follow within professional practice. A lot of it is talking to patients, talking to real patients, and then being able to experiment in that way. And within pharmacy, and again, this is why I find it so interesting. There's not always one correct answer. Let's say there's a medication that you might want to give to a patient. Not that, not every single or not a specific medication might be the right or the correct medication for the patient. You might have to do something or switch it because of the patient's needs. And having that creativity within professional practice, I think that's what I really enjoy about it. It's something that's different to seeing content. Because I don't know, as a pharmacy student, you've seen content from when you was 6 years old all the way to you now being 18, 19, 20, etc. You've seen content, but being able to be in a professional practice setting, you're now seeing patients, you're seeing human interaction. And I personally find that interesting because I think tying back to the first question, that's what inspired me to study pharmacy. You being able to have this fulfilling role where you're able to impact someone's life directly and indirectly. And I think you really see that within professional practice. But I think if we're talking from an academic sense, a lot of people hate the chemistry modules, but I somewhat like them in the sense that I find it interesting.
Crazy.
I find it quite interesting in terms of how certain drugs work. If you've got like an acidic or a basic drug, etc. I really find that nitty gritty stuff quite interesting. But what about you?
I like professional practice too. That's my favourite
Yeah.
module. Yeah, I love that. What's your go-to snack or drink whilst you're revising?
Oh, I have to think back to exam season. Okay, I think one thing that I used to do that wasn't healthy, but I did used to do it was chocolate and crisps. So the routine would be I would revise for a couple of hours in the morning, do flashcards, etc. And then for my break, I'll go to the shop, buy a chocolate bar, buy some crisps, get re-energized, come home, watch like a YouTube video, usually be like Sidemen Among Us, and then I'll start some revision again.
At least it breaks it up.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So I think something just to get the energy levels back up. Although it's not too healthy, that's what works for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. If you could be any drug, what drug would you be?
Okay, interesting question. I think the first one that comes to mind is diazepam, and that's just because it's used as like a muscle relaxant, or like when you've got muscle spasms, it's used to sort of like relax you. And I like to think that no matter the environment I'm in, I want to create that relaxing and that sort of like peaceful atmosphere. Um, or just create an environment where people are comfortable to speak to me, whether that's through, I don't know, content creation, or whether that's through my speaking to my friends or my family. I want to create that environment where people feel just relaxed and open and, a lot more calm. And the only joke I can think of that relates to that is diazepam.
Yeah, it's really cool. What do you do outside of pharmacy?
Outside of pharmacy, I think content creation, that's a big one. And I enjoy that because it explores a little bit of creative potential. And I think that's one thing that university does quite nicely that's very different to school, in the sense that within school, I feel like when you do something different, people are going to think that, okay, this thing is quite odd, because within school, I feel like you're constraints within this box, and if you step outside that box, people are going to look at you as sort of like awkward, and that shouldn't really be the case. Whereas at university, I feel like anyone can step into their creative potential, their entrepreneurial potential, and that's why you see a lot of people actually start like businesses and all these different side projects when they start university, because you can actually be yourself, and I think that's really really important in life, being able to be yourself and find fulfillment in anything that you do. So I think the main thing for me is probably content creation.
That's really cool. What does the BPSA mean to you?
So a little story back to first semester. In the first semester, for any new pharmacy students, in first semester, the amount of emails you're going to get in the first week is insane. You're going to get emails, type of emails, and I remember seeing an email from the BPSA, and from other different organizations. But from the other organizations, the key thing that stood out to me is that it wasn't student led. So students didn't really have too much of a say. And to me personally, it felt like you would just circulate information that comes from people with a lot more, I guess, like a position of power or a higher position of responsibility. Whereas with the BPSA, it was a student organization run by students for students. And that's the key thing that stood out to me, the sense that if it's a student organization, you're able to actually have an impact as a student. And that's something that I was able to do quite fortunately. And again, it's praise to the Northern Area Coordinator and the Northern Area team. When you're working within that team environment, you're able to have these different people with different strengths, different weaknesses. And when you're working together, you're able to sort of accomplish anything that you sort of put your mind to. And I think that's something that the BPSA pushes quite a lot. The idea that you're a student, but as a student, you can make a change. And that's something that I didn't really see through the other organizations.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. It's definitely helped me. And finally, do you have any pharmacy hot takes?
Oh, hot takes. Um, hmm, you got one. I'll let you go first. I'll think about
Oh,
this one.
really? Put me on the spot there. I think, like you said, we're more than just pharmacy students. There's so much more to us, and any hobby that you have outside of pharmacy, you can really incorporate it into what you do and just go for it. That'd be my hot take.
I think following that, my hot take would be that pharmacy is a lot more diverse than people may imagine. Um, Again, going back to that notion that pharmacy is someone behind a counter, it's just not the case. Pharmacy is something that is so diverse. You can go into stuff like regulatory affairs, medical informatics, a lot of things that are not traditional, that you don't really think of. So pharmacy, you're trained as like a medical professional, but also a scientist, that you can go down either route. And I think that's something that no degree probably has. The idea that you can be a scientist, but also a medical professional.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Well, thank you very much for speaking to me today, and I hope you've enjoyed being on the podcast.
100%. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Wow, I really enjoyed speaking to Oscar. I really like his outtake and his look on life, especially all the things surrounding pharmacy and all the different things that you can do with it. I can't wait to see where he'll end up, and I'm sure he's going to go far. Thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode.